So this is a little bit of a different video than what I normally do. Recently I was chatting with my buddy A. Gertz, and we were talking about old toys that we used to play with all the time, like Bionicles, Transformers, Rescue Rangers, or whatever they were called. But then when I started to think about it, I remembered a franchise that I never saw anybody ever reminisce about on the internet, or really anybody I ever knew about. So I did my due diligence and I took to the internet and I searched for it on YouTube, and surprisingly, there was nothing. As if it didn't exist. This shouldn't be obscure. These were toys that I played with. I'm serious. They were made by K'NEX. Before we get into the monstrosity that is this toy line, I want to take a second to talk about K'NEX. Nowadays, K'NEX is seen as a rip-off brand of Lego, but I want you to realize that it wasn't until 2008 that K'NEX started using the Lego brick as a part in their inventory. So just keep in mind that in the early 2000s, K'NEX wasn't seen as a rip-off brand of Lego. It was its own toy line and had nothing to do with Lego at all, until 2003 happened. So by 2003, Lego had seen huge success with their buildable action figure line, Bionicle. K'NEX was looking to get in the market though, and surprisingly not just in the buildable action figure market, but also in the robot changing market. I don't know what the Transformers market is technically called, but they wanted a piece of that pie too. So let me ask you this question. What happens when you take biological and mechanical and you put those two words together? Right. You get ReKonstructors was a 2003 toy line produced by K'NEX, once again trying to get into the market of Bionicles and Transformers. But needless to say, this Frankenstein of a franchise had some very strange visual cues to it. I mean, just take a look at the protagonists, but I guess all of that can somewhat be explained by the storyline, if that's what you can call it. Marooned on a mysterious planet, an elite team of pilots discover that they have the ability to reconstruct into 3 different armored forms to defend themselves against the vicious, shape-shifting creatures of the planet. They are in an ongoing battle to capture each other's power core, and to survive. So the story was essentially that these 4 pilots were flying around and they landed on this planet called ZeKorian. I'm not even joking, that's what it's called. And on the way in, there was some magnetic force field, who cares? But anyways, it fused these characters with parts of their machines. However, already on the planet are these creatures called the ZeKorians. Don't worry, I'm going to be saying that word a whole lot more in this video. And they were already these creatures who could, for some reason, reconstruct into different modes, but they were all creature-based typed figures. And honestly, that was probably for the best, because they're not as horrifying. On the side of the good guys, we had Ryder, the motorcycle, Shadow, the helicopter, and Skyhawk, the jet, and of course their fearless leader, Diesel, the spawn of Satan. I mean, the tank. The ZeKorians, just said it again, were on the other side of the battle, and they had characters such as Tempest, the dragonfly, Razor, the scorpion, Relic, the reptile lizard, and of course Ravage, the ferocious, fire ant. Yikes. And real quick, I want to talk about Ravage's bio. It says that ZeKor is a peaceful planet, but that he rules because he's defeated all his foes, and that he leads with an iron fist, and that he forces people to peace. I know there's a little bit more to the story because there was an online web series, which is one of the things that sadly is just non-existent on the internet anymore. It seems to be forgotten, but here's a little clip that I was able to find on the Wayback Machine thanks to somebody on Reddit. Each hero toy could be reconstructed into 3 different forms. That was their main function. They had an attack mode, a battle mode, and an escape mode. Although I don't think there was much of a difference between the attack mode and the battle mode. And actually, now that I remember it, Diesel didn't even have an escape mode. He just had a base mode. So, you know, if he was getting his ass beat by the fire ant, he just kind of had to take it. Now, there were actually comics that were in the instructions for each sets, and somehow those have survived on K'NEX's media website, where you can find the instructions for almost all of their toys ever made. Now, I'm not going to go through all the comics because I don't have the time, and honestly, I don't have the stomach. I mean, honestly, just look at this. The difference between the comic depiction and the toy depiction was something that even stood out to me as a child. I mean, let's take Ryder for an example, or Dakota Fox, as he was originally known as. Seriously, who wrote this trash? Somebody who pens children's novels? Ryder's motorcycle form is fine. It's a motorcycle. It's got wheels, it goes vroom, and kids like that. I know I did. Now, the depiction of the battle mode is honestly not that bad. It looks like a mustard-colored, staff-wielding RoboCop, until you look at the actual toy that's supposed to match it. Okay, let's try and forget that and move on to the escape mode. Maybe I just should have done more episodes of BioLude. Pretty much all the heroes' battle modes are horrifying. Some of their escape modes are serviceable, but most of them just look really weird. The ZeKorians kind of get away with it though, because it just looks like they're standing up on their hind legs or just some weird futuristic type of creature. Although I will say, Ravage is looking pretty thick in his escape mode. Let's talk about those power cords again, because they were actually things that came with the toys, and they gave them, like I said, different special powers. For instance, Skyhawk had a force field, Shadow had invisibility, and Ryder's power cord gave him incredible speed, even though he was already a motorcycle, and that should be a given. I think I remember hating him the most as a child. But don't worry, it wasn't just one wave of toys. In the following years, the ReKonstructors were joined by the... which their story is kind of even more funny, because they get a distress call from the original ReKonstructors to come save them, and then they crash just like the ReKonstructors did and get fused into... They're dumbasses, they're stupid.
ReKonstructors! Expand the battle with the hot new XTractors! Build the battle! Rebuild to survive! The ReKonstructors' new XTractors! Each sold separately!
First, there's Jammer, whose face alone on the instruction book should tell you that he's not ready for battle. Then we have Vector, whose power core allows him to travel so fast that time freezes around him. So he's essentially just Ryder, just not a freak of nature. And finally, we have Bulldog. Alright, Bulldog gets a pass for being such a man's man.
This is how we do this. In one way, I'm yours. In one way, we're strangers. But I know for sure.
After the Extractors ran their course on toy shelves, there was actually one final wave of ReKonstructors that I personally, as a child, don't even remember. And that might be because by that time I was fully ingrained in Bionicle and Transformers, but when I found these guys on the internet, what little media of them actually existed, I was kind of surprised that I didn't remember them. There was these and these. There's a whole lot less evidence that this final wave even exists. In fact, I could only find photos of the full wave inside the instructions of the leader type figures that were released, and in fact K'NEX didn't even have the instructions for the smaller sets from that wave on their website. It's like they just don't exist.
And these are ReKonstructors, attack, battle, battle, attack, and even a jet.
And so with all that information, that kind of leads us back to the beginning question I had with Agers, and that is, why was this toy line forgotten? Sure, these toys are forgettable, but did so much information about them really fall through the cracks of the internet historians? I was astonished when I wasn't able to find a video of ReKonstructors on YouTube. I mean, there's countless of YouTube videos on old toys that you might have forgotten, or old toys that might make you feel nostalgic, and every time I searched it up, I came back with nothing. Sure, I found, a couple listings on eBay and Amazon or Mercari or Wish or whatever of people selling these toys, but other than that, there really wasn't much anything. In fact, all the information that I got from this video is either from my memory, which is very foggy, of all these ReKonstructors, and 2 websites, which I've linked down in the description below, which talk about the Toyline back when they came out. Other than that, there's almost nothing out there on the internet about them. And maybe that's for the best, honestly. So, is ReKonstructors truly horrifying and we should just completely wipe it off the face of the earth? Let's see. Oh yeah. At the end of the day, ReKonstructors isn't really that bad. Yeah, it's disgusting looking and it's janky and the toy is gimmicky, but honestly, what Toyline wasn't back in the 2000s? What Toyline isn't nowadays? Kids just like toys. They just want to play with them. Sure, some of those things are disgusting, like Ryder. He's horrible, but I specifically remember Relic being my favorite toy as a kid. I guess what I'm saying is thank you, K'NEX, for making such a weird toy line like ReKonstructors for me to remember fondly. And thank you, ReKonstructors, for being a part of my childhood. I have no idea why you were or how you even were brought into my house, but you guys were just there from the beginning and I always enjoyed playing with you. And of course, thank you, Bulldog, for being such a man's man.
Oh, I'll never forget you, baby.